If anyone remembers the video segment I did like 3 weeks ago with Ben Shapiro, where he was arguing on Twitter that you all need to go out and die to save the stock market, here's where we're at. I've got a lot to say, folks. I've got a lot to say, but I'm going to let them take it away first, okay?
You love him. He's a favorite of the show. The Ben Shapiro Show, editor-in-chief of Daily Wire. You know him. You love him. He's a favorite of the show.
I would like to clarify, I do not, in fact, love Ben Shapiro, but I do know him.
Shapiro Show, editor-in-chief of Daily Wire. You can follow him at Ben Shapiro. And just to be clear, Lord, this is pre-taped because it is Passover. Yes. And Ben, I wanted to make sure that clarified so you don't get in trouble with the Lord.
Well, it's not really with the Lord. I think God knows.
Oh, they didn't even bring Ben Shapiro to the studio? Oh, I see how it is. These two want to reopen America, but they personally don't want to get the corona, so they stay in separate studios. I see. All you other workers, all you little grocery shop workers, you all go back. You all rub hands. But these two, no, they're millionaires. They've got their nice insulated studios. This is not, by the way, Ben Shapiro's normal studio. This is a different one. His normal studio setup is different. This is a separate one that he's at, probably because of coronavirus. Interesting, Ben. Fascinating. You claim to want to reopen America. That I can't help but notice that you yourself are closed. Curious.
It's all of the people who are the not good Jews watching your show who will then email me and pretend they are good Jews because I'm on your show.
I don't have anything to say about that.
Oh, okay.
Right,
So
like that's the way that would have to work. I get tons of emails every time I do a pre-recorded podcast, and then it appears sometime on a Jewish holiday. People will be like, "Oh, so finally you've shown your true colors." And it's like, "Well, you were listening, weren't you?"
Yes, exactly.
So,
yes.
I don't know anything about. Jews have like a rule where on Sundays you can't use electricity, right? Isn't that like a thing? I don't know. I fucking know. I'm so glad I'm not religious.
And I'm sorry for Nicodemus's incessant emails. They seem very
Okay, Saturday, not Sunday. Is that a thing? Yeah.
very unnecessary. He's a pious prick. But I do know that obviously Passover so pre-taped for people who don't necessarily know. Ben Shapiro, first off, how are you doing right now with the quarantine? I mean, you're still doing your show, a lot of content.
Yeah, a lot of content happening. I have 3 kids under the age of 7, including a newborn, and we are locked in the home, and my kids don't have school. And so I'm on the edge, my friend. I mean, I'll tell you, listen, I'm a lot luckier than a lot of other people. I still have a job. We still have a business. People are still working here. And so I don't want to make it sound as though I am in the bottom quadrant of sufferers. I am not. I'm in the top quadrant of sufferers. But with that said, small children, no place to go. Our ridiculous mayor has shut down.
I don't know how Ben Shapiro, if anyone could do what Ben can, Ben Shapiro just made the process of taking care of his family dorky and insufferable by making it a quadrant thing. Like, he couldn't have just said, like, I love my kids. I mean, kids are annoying. I love them, but whoo boy, I could use some fresh air. No, he had to say, well, I recognize that due to my socioeconomic status, I am in the top quadrant of sufferers concerning my proximity to my children. I do recognize that. I don't want people to think that I'm accusing them of having situations which are comparable to mine because they might be, in fact, in the lower quadrant. Like, I'm sorry. It's extraordinary to me that a person this uncharismatic could ever have like a public following.
On every park in the city. And so, yeah, I mean, everybody's going a little bit nuts. My kids have basically turned this thing into Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
They're running around and they're holding up pigs' heads on spears and stuff, and it's wild. I mean, all of your restrictions on media and how much TV they can watch a day have gone completely out the window.
Oh God.
Basically, TV is now the third parent. Because that's just the way.
Well, you shouldn't have sat them in front of Lord of the Flies if that wasn't your goal.
That's fair. I probably shouldn't. I should definitely have some different viewing.
Yeah, throw some Baby Einstein on there. Once you've seen them use Piggy's glasses to build a fire, you've pretty much seen. So the one thing I've just learned there is Ben must really can't stand his kids.
True. Are we getting to the content yet?
We've learned.
Dude, I mean, kids are mediocre in the best of times. And then you're locked in the house with them for long.
Children can't even participate in the economy. They provide no beneficial outcomes to our stock market. You have to invest so much time and resources into making them productive workers. It's insane.
Long periods of time, and they start to lose their minds. Like, you have to understand that everything that you and I feel as adults is magnified in small children.
Right.
So, like, if you lock me in a house with a person I love, you lock me in a house with my wife for like a month on end, we're going to start to get, a little bit crotchety. We're going to start to be like a little mad with each other and a little bit abrasive, and You do that with like a 3-year-old child, and within 7 minutes, they're tearing things off the walls. They're trying to beat you to death with a toy hammer. Like, there is
Based Shapiro please free us.
no,
So-
there is no wall.
Just
So,
to be clear,
yes.
pre-quarantine was Ben Shapiro not abrasive, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I
Okay.
mean, you've never experienced abrasion like this abrasion.
But you know what the funny thing? My wife and I, we had kind of a breakthrough a little, not long ago, but we always love spending, we're both quality time people. That's our love language. Right. But we don't have to be talking or doing everything together. And so we can be in the same room. I can be watching a movie. She can be reading her book about
Wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I am just dead tired. I can't do anything. So basically, I've seen like, we've been home with each other when it's about this thing.
Yes, exactly. Sweet signal. All right, so
It depends. I know.
waterboarded, and my wife came in and
What?
you know exactly where I come from because you were at my house while I was waterboarded, and my wife came in and served you a beverage while I was being waterboarded by special forces. She couldn't be less surprised or
Those times
concerned.
when we used to actually be like within shows of time.
So you wrote an article, obviously, at Daily.
Okay. 4 minutes and 37 seconds in, I have a feeling we finally arrived at the content of this video that is just over 10 minutes, so we can get the 2 ad breaks.
Wire, talking about kind of some questions, key questions that need to be answered before we reopen the economy. And I think one of your questions was, we need to determine the accurate fatality rate. I want to first get to what your questions are, what you think are the most necessary questions. And then I will say this.
Just asking questions, Pepe.
I don't know if we have a disagreement. I think that the overall deaths per capita are really the only reliable metric at this point because the fatality rate is so dictated by infection rates and accuracy of testing and them not lying in China.
So I think that is true.
Yeah, Argantos, I think you're completely right. They're attempting to humanize themselves before they tell people to die for the bottom line. I think that's completely right. So for any type of like media production, especially very like ego-oriented ones like what I do or what they do, humanizing yourself is important because it makes it more likely that people are going to trust you. And I think this is a huge component of this because Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are living embodiments of hatred towards the working class. Like Steven Crowder literally did a video talking about how Labor Day is disgusting because all the workers are leeching off the back of the bosses who are doing the real hard work. And Ben Shapiro has done like constantly, like ever since the quarantine started, talked about opening it up and letting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people die just to get the economy back on track. These two people fucking despise poor people. And the extent to which they personally despise poor people versus their financially incentivized to despise poor people because they're being paid for by billionaires who, rely on austerity to increase their margins is impossible for me to say. But one way or another, the best way for them to get that message across without their idiot followers realizing, hey, we're listening to 2 millionaires talk about how I shouldn't be receiving checks from the government and should be sent back out to work during a plague. Is that a little fucked up? So to prevent them from reaching that realization, we then do this hemming and hawing, oh, they're just family men. Oh, they're just, they're businessmen, sure, but they're well off, socialites. They're doing their best out there. They're dealing with the kids too. Hey guys, hey, my fellow boomers, don't you think you've spent too much time is the wife getting on your nerves? She not getting you beers from the kitchen fridge anymore? Those kids scampering around your feet, they're getting a little too feisty for your liking. Wouldn't it be nice to get back to work, get away from the family grind for a little bit, Just gotta lay the groundwork,
True, but I think the problem is that number only goes up. What I mean is that if you're looking at the fatality rate, if you're looking at the number of fatalities per million, then all that's going to happen is that the presumption is that when we all go out of quarantine, if we infect each other and tons of people die, well, then that number is going to go up. So that does not give you a good indicator of exactly where the number is going to go, whereas the case fatality rate theoretically should give you an idea of how far things are going to go given a certain number being infected, right? The only two statistics that really matter are the ones that we have no numbers on. One is the transmission rate. We assume that it's somewhere between 2.5 and 5.
Right.
And the other one is the case fatality rate, and we have no clue there because we don't know what the denominator is because we know that tons and tons of people are asymptomatic. There was a New England Journal of...
What? Okay, wait. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, I'm not a virologist. I'm pretty sure what he just said is bullshit. Okay? So his argument is that the information we need is on the transmission rate of COVID-19 and the and it's like it's lethality like at an individual level, which we don't know because we don't know how many people are asymptomatic. But those we for one, I'm pretty sure we already have the transmission rate. Yeah, I think it's around 2.5. And for two, the actual practical rate of lethality is already something we functionally know. There are already hundreds of thousands of people who have been infected. We already have a really good estimate of what the lethality rate of COVID-19 is. And yeah, agreed, Mythaldu, the transmission rate is contextual. The transmission rate of COVID-19 is going to be very different in a society in lockdown than it's going to be in a fucking Floridian spring break party. There's the issue. So this is the issue. Ari username, shut the fuck up. The issue here is that they're trying to introduce this ambiguity when the ambiguity isn't actually that relevant. We already know that the transmission rate is much higher than flu is traditionally. We know that for a fact. So this is something we need to be concerned with. And secondly, we are aware of the fact that the lethality rate for COVID-19 is approximately 10 times that of the flu. Now, that's not evenly distributed. It more heavily affects the older folk, admittedly. But this is information we have fairly decent knowledge of. The only thing we don't know is how many people are completely asymptomatic. The more asymptomatic people there are who haven't been tested, the less the actual lethality rate is. But we have a decent estimate. Now, it's not perfect, but it's decent. The issue with takes like this from Ben Shipster is that by introducing ambiguity, he's opening up room for people to start asking, how big of an issue is this really? That's what they're doing here. Ben is not a fucking virologist. Ben doesn't give a shit about the actual outcome of like what these relative like statistical data points are. What Ben gives a shit about is introducing enough doubt into our general medical consensus that he can start to make arguments like, oh, well, hey, the transmission rate's been going down since quarantine. The virality rate has gone down. The lethality rate could be higher than it actually is because we don't know how many people are asymptomatic and haven't been tested. There's really nothing about this that suggests it's any worse than a particularly bad flu. We really should get this economy going. This is another Democratic hoax. They're just trying to make the economy go down so Trump looks bad. That's what's going on here. This is not like some completely neutral, apolitical discussion of like medical outcomes.
Medicine piece that just came out would have been when people watched this yesterday, that looked at a number of pregnant women who were brought into New York City hospitals, all of whom were screened for COVID, because when you come in, they screen you for COVID, apparently. It was like 211 women, 29 of them tested positive for COVID, only 4 were symptomatic, which suggests...
See, look. Listen, how many people are asymptomatic, huh? Maybe you've already had COVID and you don't even know it, guys. Huh? No information, by the way, on whether or not those women later developed symptoms, because this isn't how you actually make medical determinations. But just, hey, like, oh, hey, maybe you've already had it. Can't be that big of a deal. Looks like so many people have had it, doesn't even affect them that much.
Just that for everybody who is symptomatic, there are at least 7 people who are asymptomatic. If you actually...
No, you don't know that. What?
9 of them tested positive for COVID, only 4 were symptomatic, which suggests that for everybody who is symptomatic, there are at least 7 people who are asymptomatic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's how statistics works. You take exactly one group of people, you test who's symptomatic and not and asymptomatic of those who are infected, you just divide one from the other, and then you have the entire population rate. No information on whether those women who were asymptomatic later became symptomatic, and it was just too early to tell. Guys, the incubation period for COVID-19 is up to 2 weeks. Up to 2 weeks. It's entirely possible most of those women would later experience that. Holy fucking shit, dude. This is it. Like, this is it. This is why, like, don't ever, just because there's legitimate medical ambiguity, don't ever let weaselly little fucking genocidal sociopaths like Ben Shapiro be the ones to ascribe that ambiguity, because they're doing so for a political agenda.
If you actually applied that statewide to New York State right now, New York State has a 5% case fatality rate. It's something like 10,000 dead people and 195,000 positive tests. Well, take that bottom number, that 195,000, multiply it by 7.25.
Oh, yeah. Huh. Well, hello. My name is Ben Shapiro. Well, I just recently took a COVID-19 test in the comfort of my own home, and I found that I don't have it. Actually, neither do any of my children or my wife. If we extrapolate this data to the rest of the United States, we can actually find that nobody in the United States has COVID-19. I took a test. 100% of the people in my household, they don't have it. It seems to me this is just another media hoax. This is big brain Shapiro. This is the most egregious fucking abuse of statistics I have ever heard in my life.
Right. And now it's looking a lot more like 1.4 million.
Right.
So your actual case fatality rate is 0.7.
Except you don't know how many of the people with COVID-19 that have tested positive were themselves asymptomatic. Nothing that he's saying is true. Literally, there are so... do I do a paint stream? What do I need to do? Okay, hold on. I need all of you to understand how fucking stupid this is. Okay, Christ. Okay, here. All right. Here are the pregnant women who were tested for COVID-19. Okay, we're going to simplify the data a little bit. Okay, so it was 200 women. We're going to do one dot for each 10 women. Okay, so of those 200 women, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, of those 16, so 160 of the 200 women tested negative for COVID-19, okay? And then 3 of these dots, so 30 women tested positive but asymptomatic, and then 10 tested positive symptomatic, okay? There we go. So if we extrapolate this data to the population, as an idiot like Ben Shapiro might, we can make the reasonable conclusion that the sample was 29 women. We're just estimating data, okay? Hold on. So if we take this population and then we extrapolate it to the rest of America, if we then extrapolate this to the rest of America, it's actually, for every one person who's this isn't even accurate because the dot was even smaller than this. It would be like this, like fucking 3 women are symptomatic. Oh, so for every person who has COVID-19, only 1/10 of them are symptomatic. That would mean that of the symptomatic people, we can just multiply that number by 10, and actually the whole of America is just full of people who have COVID-19, but it doesn't hurt them because actually it's just a Democratic hoax. It's just a Democratic hoax, people. It's not a big deal. That's the information that's trying to be applied here. Here are some fucking statistical considerations to take into account. First of all, Mr. Shapiro, you cannot extrapolate data taken from one group of people at one hospital to the entirety of America. The transmission rate and the infection rate and the lethality rate are highly contextual based on the fucking circumstances of the environment that you live in. How many hospital beds there are, the level of education, how far away you are from the nearest hospital, the level of social integration, the extent to which the quarantine has been applied. Okay, that's number 1. Okay? For 2, you have no fucking idea if these women later became symptomatic. There is a up to 2 week incubation period for COVID-19. Okay? So you can be infected here, 2 weeks can pass, and then only at this point do you start to recognize symptoms. But during all of this, you can transmit the disease to other people. This is one of the reasons why COVID-19 is so dangerous. The flu has an incubation period of 1 day. 1 day. Which means that if you have the flu, you almost immediately realize it and then can practice isolation, not go to work and stuff. With COVID-19, you can have 2 entire weeks of being completely physically unaffected, but being a virophage, spreading disease to everyone around you. This is why you cannot personally make any decisions about whether or not it's okay or safe for you to go in public. You have no idea if you're affected. It's up to 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, okay, 2 weeks possibly, I don't know. It's a lot longer than the flu. You don't know whether or not you are susceptible. You don't know whether or not you're exposing other people to the disease. You can't know. If you go in and get a COVID-19 test, you might indeed test positive, but we aren't assigning COVID-19 tests to everybody, only to people who are symptomatic, which means that we are not assigning them to people who are positive but asymptomatic. The only reason these women got tested is because they went to a hospital. That's hardly representative of the entire population. There are like 18 lines of statistical fucking failure that Ben Shapiro has engaged in here. And it's actually mathematically impossible for me to explain how fucking stupid the shit he's saying is. It's incredible. It doesn't work. But hey, anything that you can use to poison the well and preempt the eventual fucking conclusions they're going to come to in this live chat.
7%, which is significantly higher.
I see what you're saying in that.
I see what I also can't do math, and I completely understand what you're saying, Ben.
The case fatality rate will go down because as testing is more accurate, it'll be a smaller portion of the overall infection rates.
And that makes a difference because if we all go out and infect each other, and then it makes the kind of overall number of deaths that we expect a lot lower.
Hey guys, if we all go out and infect each other and just get it over with, the deaths would actually go down. You're all 40 IQ listeners to Steven Crowder's web show. I know you're going to buy this argument.
So, as far as overall numbers.
No, so this is the argument he just made. If we all go and infect each other, the actual relative percentage of deaths will go down because more people are going to develop asymptomatic conditions, which is factually incorrect, by the way. Because if we all go out and infect each other, the percentage increase of people who need immediate hospitalization, the absolute increase is going to lead to hospitals being overcrowded, which means people who need hospitalization won't be able to get it, which means those people are going to fucking die. Herd immunity doesn't work. That was the policy of Boris Johnson's government, and they abandoned it because it doesn't work, and it was against the advice of all of their medical experts, and they did it anyway because they cared more about preserving their stock markets than they did the lives of their people.
That we expect. What I am saying is I think the most accurate metric as far as what we should be using for people to sort of assess their risk, because a lot of this.
You as an individual should not be assessing your risk. Individual human beings are not capable of meaningfully assessing their risk level in a fucking plague. There's no individual I feel healthy, No, we trust the experts. We stay inside. It prevents deaths.
Was, oh my gosh, we're seeing at one point they said a 10% mortality rate, then a 5%, then a 3%, and now we don't know the mortality rate, but they predicted 2.5 million deaths, then a minimum with social distancing, which wasn't supposed to have kicked in, 100,000 to 240,000, and then
wow. The projected deaths went down after the United States implemented a quarantine? Sounds like a great argument to get rid of that quarantine. I hear conservatives make this argument all the fucking time on Twitter. We're all staying inside, but the expected death rate just keeps going lower and lower and lower. Guess we didn't need to stay inside at all. That's literally what they're arguing. Literally, imagine a fucking homeopath or like a fucking spirit healer getting their fucking shot in the chest, and they get fucking wheeled into the hospital, and the hospital removes the bullet and starts suturing up the destroyed internal organs and then heals them, and they get up and they look at their surgeon, they look him fucking face to face, they look him in the eye, okay? And they're like, I got better. See? Traditional medicine just doesn't work that well. My methods of prayer healing were more effective. And then walks out.
60,000. The overall, and I think especially when comparing it across countries, the most accurate that we have is the per capita death rate. Here's why, because you eliminate more variables in the sense that, all right, you go to per capita, right? So that matters because you can't just go by a total rate. And then testing efficiency is very different, for example, let's say in...
Nothing that they're talking about right now is in any way, shape, or form relevant to the question of opening up the quarantine. This is political mathematical obfuscation. Nothing they're referring to right now is relevant.
Belgium and France, Spain or Italy compared to the United States. And then overall, when you look at how many people per million residents or inhabitants of this country have died, it's the only one that we have that's a constant now. I know it'll only go up, but I don't...
Yeah, no shit. Everyone uses fucking per capita when it comes to stuff like this.
I think it's going to only go up for the United States. As a matter of fact, even as it goes up in the United States, the gap widens between places like Italy and Spain still.
What? So we just talked for 30 seconds saying two things. One, we should use per capita arguments. And two, some countries will have worse outcomes than other countries.
It depends, right? I mean, because the one thing that's not taking into account is the actual lockdown measures, right? So what we're watching, for example, right now in Sweden is Sweden's rate continues to go up, Will it surpass Switzerland? Probably not. Will it surpass Italy? Probably not. Also, when you adjust for population, it kind of gives you some weird outliers because some places have only 6 million people or 5 million people. Right. The United States has 330 million people, so your sample size.
Well, you can't count like Andorra, for example. Like I don't use
right, exactly.
Or
like
Luxembourg,
Micronesia, right? I mean, there are certain places where one person dies, and your actual death per million rate is like 50 because there's only 10 people in the country, right?
Right.
So that kind of makes it difficult.
I don't know what the relevance of this is to their claims about reopening America.
But it is fair to compare France, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and the United States. I mean, those are all sizable enough countries. None of the, you know, obviously the United States is very different in that we're, by the way, also, let's be really clear.
But it's not taking into account, again, the reason I'm not going along with this is just because I think it doesn't take into account the lag time. Meaning that, is France 2 weeks ahead of us? We don't know. Is Italy 2 weeks ahead of us? They shut down.
I'm not entirely sure what the argument that like we can get out of like trying to compare our per capita like infection rate to other countries. Every country has had different responses. Every country is of different sizes with different city densities, with different economies and different cultures. Every country has experienced the virus epidemic like exploding at different times. Like there's obviously a huge amount of variability. Like I don't know what the relevance is here.
Like a week in advance of us, maybe 2 weeks in advance of us. And so if you're looking at where the United States is going to be in 2 weeks, which is kind of what we're trying to figure out as to when we reopen, then you want to be looking at something more accurate, like an approximate
I will.
Rate.
The reason I'll push back
I will
is,
say this.
Go ahead.
The one that actually matters to me more than the case fatality rate is what the case fatality rate looks like for young, healthy people, right? Because I think this.
You've lived a long life of 55 years, okay? Don't be sour about this. It's your time. Go out. Work at your local gas station. Go back to trucking, okay? It's your time. Are you really saying your life is worth more than the American economy, Boomer?
This is where we're being completely snowed.
Not even that young, but yes.
Well, anybody under the age of 45. If you're under the age of 45 and you're healthy, your chances of dying from COVID are exorbitantly low.
No, see, they keep doing this too. This may be the case, but this is in large part because of hospitalization helping the few young people who are at near lethal levels of infection. And B, what relevance is this? Are they literally just suggesting that death doesn't matter as much? If young people get out there, they have family members that are older. They're going to come in contact with those family members. Nothing except a total quarantine protects those people.
Right. Very, very, very low. And I'm looking like right now, this minute, at some of the New York City health data. The New York City health data, which has revealed the number of positive tests, the number of dead people, and the number of people who have died without pre-existing conditions. According to the New York City Health Department, there were 26 deaths total in New York City among people aged below 45 with no underlying conditions. That's out of over 6,000 deaths and out of over 42,500 diagnosed cases of COVID-19 for New Yorkers under that age, which means that your actual chances of dying in New York City, and this is, again, a high-end estimate because it's not taking into account all the people who have not been tested and all the people who are asymptomatic, even using the number of tests that have come back positive versus the number of people who have died under the age of 45 with.
How many words does it take Ben Shapiro to say the death rate is much lower for young people? This is extraordinary.
No pre-existing conditions, you're looking at a case fatality rate of 0.06%, meaning that 994 out of every 1,000 New Yorkers under the age of 45 who are healthy will not die, and that is probably a low-end estimate as to the number of people who will live.
And
probably,
I think, and is that
more like 996 or 997?
Right.
What? Wait, what? It just ended? They didn't even talk about reopening America. Did they edit it out because after this they started discussing like how they should like march the boomers off to their death or something? What? That was the most abrupt video ending I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, they saw that they had a little timer next to them. The 10-minute mark, like they clicked into place. They're like, well, see ya. I love all these chatters, dude. Look at this gutbuster right here. People said Infinity War was the most ambitious crossover. No, this is. Ha! True. Marvel movies. True. Jesus Christ. Yeah, like ultimately, like at the end of the day, the only purpose behind this discourse is normalizing a sense of complacency in the conservative electorate. Like right now, at this moment, insane as it is, there's like this big kerfuffle going on because there are a bunch of states where conservatives are literally having protests against social distancing. They're having these big protests. They're blocking like they're blocking ambulances from reaching hospitals. They're just it's, I saw one sign a lady's holding up. It said, social distancing is communism. And, you know, God willing, right? Could only hope. But like, and Trump now is talking about like liberating these countries with these states with the Second Amendment. The morning after calling for the reopening of some states in the midst of the COVID-19 panic, President Donald Trump on Friday issued a series of tweets calling for the liberation of various states. The tweets focused on Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, with the Virginia tweet explicitly saying, "Liberate Virginia and save your great Second Amendment. It is under siege." So the argument that, and this is just social distancing. This is just the quarantine. So the argument that is being made here, if I understand it properly, is that conservatives, the voters, are being convinced that the quarantine is being imposed on them by a radical, liberal, Democrat, socialist, communist agenda designed to destroy the economy to spite Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is feeding into this by framing these protests as an attempt at liberating themselves from the, you know, tyranny of the quarantine. And what Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are doing is they're supplying the conservative intelligentsia wing of this movement. They're disseminating rhetoric that is meant to make COVID-19 seem like not a big deal, like it's insubstantial, like, ooh, it's just a bad flu. The expected death rate keeps going down and down and down. We don't actually know how many people are infected, and so on. And they're doing this because they want to get businesses back up on board. The people who are paying Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, the people who fund their enterprises, are businessmen who have, you know, their income comes from the businesses that require the, you know, labor of the proletariat. So it's a death cult. I mean, it's a death cult. That's what it is. We're describing a death cult right now. There are conservative voters, poor people, who are more at risk than I am, because I have health insurance at least, who are going out in public and smearing their greasy hands against each other's faces because they've been told that their medical quarantine has been imposed by radical socialists who are looking to hurt Donald Trump. It's a death cult. It is a death cult. That is what it is. Conservatism has always, to an extent, been a death cult, but I think they have now. I mean, it is very literal now. With climate change, of course, you know, it's always been the case, but now I think this is the most poignant expression of a death cult imaginable. I mean, I really want you guys to imagine like a fantasy world for a second, okay? Can we imagine like a fantasy universe, okay? Let's say, what's something you all like? The Hunger Games. There, sure. Well, that's the first thing that came to my mind. We're going to go with that, okay? It's Hunger Games circa 2243, I don't know, okay? All right? And one of the villages of people, okay? One of the villages of people is being, oh, you don't like it? Well, you know what? Suck my dick. One of the villages of people is being racked with this plague. And desperately, the bourgeois are trying to contain it because they profit from the labor of these district proletarians. But the district has been convinced by one particular group of rich folk that actually the plague is fake and they're just trying to hamper their crop harvest. And hundreds of thousands of people are not only protesting the existence of that quarantine, but are actively endangering themselves by physically commingling at protests, blocking ambulances from making it to hospitals. What kind of protest blocks ambulances? I really want you to think about that. I want you to think about the moral character of people participating in a protest who are trying to block ambulances from reaching a hospital during a pandemic. I really want you to think about that. That's not normal. You know, in the Hong Kong protests, have you seen the videos? In the Hong Kong protests, all of these protesters, even though they're packed shoulder to shoulder, they all make room. They all slide to the sides. The ambulances go right on through because ambulance drivers are all of our comrades, guys. The healthcare system may be fucked, you know, but the actual medical workers are our comrades because we care about people. Or, you know, alternatively, God Emperor Trump is being threatened by an insidious communist plot to prevent people from getting a sickness, and we have to show our solidarity for said Trump by protesting outside hospitals and blocking ambulances. Death cult. I don't know. I don't know.